And coming up on this week's show, the Brighton Belle, we visit the iconic train soon to return to the main line. Chiltern Railways' new trains, or are they? We ask Managing Director Richard Allan. And Richard speculates about the forthcoming budget and the state of public finances, and he has some dire predictions for the railway. Welcome to Green Signals from me, Nigel Harris, and...
from me, Richard Bowker.
We have a packed show this week, Richard, and so we start first with something really positive and uplifting. Isn't that good? It's been 17 years in the making, but the historic Brighton Belle Pullman train set is now very close to returning to the main line. And what a day and a sight that will be. Umber and cream Pullmans in the sun, or even in the rain. They look glorious. Anyway, Richard went to Crewe with his dad on Friday, August 8th to see how things were progressing, and this is what they found.
The all-electric Brighton Belle Pullman train was conceived by the Southern Railway in 1933. And by the time it was withdrawn by British Rail in 1972, it had become a genuine railway icon. There were 3 trains, and remarkably, nearly every carriage was saved. Only 2 of the original 15 carriages were scrapped. The 5 Belle Trust was formed in 2009 to progress the restoration of the Brighton Belle and return it to the main line. The challenge has been formidable and expensive, although since Jeremy Hosking and his team at LSL have become involved and started working with the 5 Belle Trust, things have moved on apace. I've come to Crewe with my father, a long-time donor to the Trust, to see how the work is progressing on this remarkable train. This being a Donors' Day, Ian Brown, CBE, Chair of the Trust, gives a project update before we head outside to have a look around the star of the show. We are given an in-depth guided tour of the train. I'm struck, as always, with these very high-quality restorations, how seamlessly the equipment of the past is married up with modern electronics and systems. We pose for photos and tour the passenger saloons. This was a third-class carriage, which originally would have had 2+2 seating. It's been converted to 2+1, and yet it looks absolutely authentic.
Sitting on this train it is literally like stepping back in time. The quality of the work that's been done is incredible. The Art Deco fittings, the attention to detail, the freestanding chairs, the fact that every Pullman carriage has its own name, whether it's Doris or Beryl, and the fact that the clock in each car's got the name of the coach you're in. I mean, the detail is just simply quite extraordinary.
There are beautiful inward opening doors. Central door locking, an essential requirement for this kind of stock to operate on the network, will be fitted once the set has finished commissioning. First class is sumptuous. These freestanding chairs are especially comfortable. Catering was an important feature of the Brighton Belle, breakfast especially.
How many covers would they have done in this kitchen back in the day?
Well, they would have taken care of at least 1 third class, which was 42 seats, and 20 to 60 odd covers.
And they had an hour to do it.
Yeah, so they worked hard, and particularly breakfast. It was all kippers, of course.
Wandering through this train really does feel like a portal into a long-gone, elegant age. And I'm struck by just how close to completion the restoration now feels. Ian Brown, the Chair of the Trustees. How does it feel to see it looking like this, so close?
I think the word is elated. We all love it. I mean, the project started in 2008, that's 17 years ago. And we didn't really realise what we'd taken on. To refurbish the train is one thing, but to get it into top-class mainline operational condition, like it is today, is a real achievement by LSL and the team of trustees and the donors who have supported the project for 17 years. I mean, the underframe and the wheels and the motors are all what you might call modern, the 1960s British Rail multiple unit, but the bodies and everything in the body is original. And we took the decision, rather than just tart it up and get it out there, to actually do a full refurbishment to the original condition. That's what the trustees wanted, and that's what the donors wanted.
There are some features that are new, though, in order to meet modern compliance needs and customer expectations. The huge new kitchen is mightily impressive and will enable LSL to offer their impressive premier dining experience. There's a space for those with accessibility needs, and a fully accessible toilet. The doors into this area are pneumatic with low-level push buttons, yet everything has been integrated in an entirely sympathetic manner. Feels as if it could always have been like this. I ask Ian how long now before we see the Brighton Belle on the main line.
It's completely finished, ready to run. It's done its tests in terms of the loading gauge, does it fit within the tunnels and stations? And in terms of its ride tests, it runs beautifully. It's got to be commissioned, which is quite a big, about £100,000 worth of commissioning. And that's the big step we've got to go now. So there really is, the donors really have got to push it over the edge now and join the trust and support us to get it out on the road. So the key point now is how to commercialise the train with a contract for LSL to run it on the network as part of their portfolio with the Blue Pullman and their steam trains.
A trip to LSL, of course, would not be complete without a quick tour around their impressive facilities. This is a rail enthusiast's paradise. Heritage diesels of different classes await their next turn of duty. Magnificent steam locomotives are on shed, such as BR Standard Class 7 number 70,000 Britannia. BR Standard 8P number 71,000 Duke of Gloucester is also here. Class 55 Deltic number 55022 Royal Scots Grey has now been fully fitted with ETCS. Coaches from the Statesman train are being painted to such a high standard that the finish looks like glass. Mark 1s are stripped down and no expense is spared to return them to tip-top condition. And I even have a few moments for a spot of personal indulgence to admire the classic lines of, in my view at least, the most beautiful diesel locomotive to grace British Railways, the Class 40. We have a quick look in the main workshop to admire an LMS Black 5 and a GWR King number 6024 King Edward I. Then it's back to the office for a quick Q&A and a wrap-up from the chairman. I last visited LSL in October 2024, and since then a significant amount of work has been done to the Brighton Belle. Completion is not that far away, and I, for one, can't wait to see this grand old lady back again, running between London Victoria and Brighton.
Well, how about that, Richard? It takes a lot to impress me these days after all the years I've been around, but that absolutely passed the threshold and then some. It's just wonderful, isn't it? Sumptuous, luxurious.
It's all those things. And I agree. I mean, you think you've seen it all, and then you go to something like that. We wandered around it, and I just went, wow, the bar has been well and truly raised. It is a magnificent thing.
And again, you have to say the sheer craftsmanship of the work in there, in the marquetry and the panelling and the upholstery and the furniture making. Well done to all. It just shows those skills are still there, aren't they?
They are.
Okay, at the top of the show, we said we'd spoken with Richard Allan of Chiltern Railways. That's because Chiltern has finally signed the long-expected agreement to lease all 13 of the 5-car Mark V sets formerly operated by TPE. In turn, that will allow Chiltern Railways to return the Mark III sets they've been using for several years, which are now approaching, amazing as it seems, 50 years old. So Richard spoke with Chiltern Railways MD Richard Allan to find out more about this story.
Richard, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Thanks for your time. And look, this is great news, isn't it? I mean, you've got these new trains. I mean, they're new to you. When are passengers going to see these Mark Vs in service?
So you're right, Richard. It is absolutely fantastic news. It is the best news we've had in Chiltern so far this decade, and we're halfway through the decade. It's going to be fantastic for customers because it's a real step up in quality on board, and the fact that we're going to get the entire fleet of Mark V coaches means that we can both replace the oldest coaches, our Mark IIIs, like for like, and there's more capacity, so we can run more services, which we're planning to do from December 26.
That's brilliant. I mean, I suppose my next question follows from that, though. I think is now more logical to me because you say you're getting all the fleet, right? And it's taken quite a while to get this deal done. And I think there's been certainly some suggestions that I've seen. It was quite difficult to get it over the value for money thresholds. Why was that? It seems a bit of a no-brainer to me.
So it has taken much longer than I would have liked to get there. In fact, I think it's taken longer than anyone involved in the process would like. We really started looking at this about 4 years ago because we knew the Mark IIIs, which are now nearly 40, well, they're nearly 50 years old, they were coming to the end of their useful life. We've done a couple of things in the meantime. We've been careful about how we use them, and for the last couple of years, we've been fueling them with the recycled vegetable oil, formerly called HVO, hydro-treated vegetable oil. So that's been good, but we knew this. This is only a sort of a short window in which we could actually replace the Mark IIIs and the locomotives that haul them. They are both going off lease in March, at the end of March next year. So that is a few months away, and therefore we're coming up against this hard deadline and working really hard, both within Chiltern and with colleagues at the DFT, to really make the case for both replacing like for like and taking the whole fleet. And probably it's taken the whole fleet that's taken the more time than we would have wished, but we've got there. And actually, now we've got there, it's brilliant news for customers because we can step up in quality and step up in services. So to give you an example of that, it means that we can effectively go to half-hour frequency on Marylebone to Moore Street services from December 26, and the vast majority of those services will be formed of Mark V coaches, so consistently 5 coaches with some additional services to support in peak times. But from a customer point of view, it's every half hour, and it's that quality of experience on board the Mark Vs, which I'm really excited about. Gives us a great opportunity to both improve that quality and then to redeploy the displaced diesels, particularly the 168s, onto the Oxford corridor, where we know we've got strong growth. Bicester Village is doing really well. That's a huge retail park on our network. Yeah. Oxford United is moving into a new football stadium. There's a huge amount of development going on around the Chiltern network over the next 5 and 10 years. And this plan, this introduction of additional capacity, is designed to generate and respond to that demand.
So that's great. So that's kind of effectively investing for growth, which is good to see. One issue though, the Mark V sets, which weren't without their issues when they were in service with TransPennine, have been off lease for a little while. I'm not. You'll know far better how long than me. They've not quite been sat in a field, but they've been out of use. And we know from other train operators who've brought back out of use or off lease stock, sometimes there's a bit more remediation work to bring them back into service than you probably first thought. What's the situation with the Mark Vs? Are you fairly confident you'll be able to get them in by that hard deadline?
Well, we're very conscious of the point to make, and you're absolutely right that we need to make sure that the trains are fit for purpose when they go into service. And we've been to have a look at them. Indeed, the first rake of coaches and their 68 locomotive arrived into Banbury Depot, Chiltern's Banbury Depot, on Friday, and that was literally 3 days after we signed the deal with DFT and got all the agreements sorted. So we signed on Monday, announced on Tuesday, and the first train arrived into Banbury on Friday so that our engineering team could get their hands on it. As you might imagine, huge excitement from colleagues, people out in the platforms at Leamington Spa and at Banbury looking to see this train coming in, because it's been, as I say in Glasgow, the talk of the steamy for the last few months of getting these new trains into Chiltern. It's such good news for customers, but it's a massive boost for colleagues. So yes, we are going to have a really good look at the trains, and the way we're going to introduce them is over effectively a 12-month period. So the intention is that we get the first Mark V sets in from early 2026, so let's say January, that's the working assumption, and then that'll continue right the way through calendar year 2026.
So maybe a little bit of nervousness until the engineering guys have actually...
Yeah. Clearly, it's a big change, and the trains haven't done as much mileage as you would have expected for a train that's now effectively 6 years old. But we're seeing that as a positive, because actually the interior, having been on to look at one at Portbrook site in Long Marston, it feels like a brand new train, and it's still got that fresh smell.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you about the interiors.
A new car type of smell, but a new train type of smell.
Okay, but when you look at the pictures, which we've got some to show folks, they're very TransPennine-y, that very sort of distinctive, lots of shades of blues and silvers and greys and whatever. What will you do? Will you do any interior refurb on them, or will you basically sort of clean them and take them as they are?
So I remember being a customer of TransPennine when they introduced them pre-COVID way back in 2019, which feels a long time ago now, more than
Doesn't
6
it?
years, and being really impressed by the quality on board. And actually, I really like the interior. And fortunately, the Chiltern colour palette is not too different from the TransPennine. So no, we're not going to do anything different to the interior. We'll obviously brand it Chiltern inside,
Yeah.
but we'll brand it Chiltern on the outside. So it's noticeably a Chiltern train for customers catching the service.
And am I right that you're bringing back first class? I mean, that's quite a bold move in this market, isn't it?
Well, they have a 5 coaches, one of which is first, and Chiltern has used historically on the Mark IIIs, which are 6 coaches. One of those is first class, the Mark III coach. Chiltern historically has called that business zone, which is a kind of quasi first class. So to keep it really simple, we are going to reinstate first class for customers. There's a key point here, though. We looked at catering, and from my experience, and you'll know this, catering can be very expensive, and we needed to make the business case to get the trains in, so there'll be no catering on board, at least initially. We'll keep that under review, but we will be using first class as it's a more spacious environment for customers, and we think that there's a market there for that. People will benefit from that environment, and that helps with the business case.
So not even a trolley service then. So no catering. Okay, because Marylebone to Moore Street, that's a pretty long stretch, and you're catering for. It's quite an affluent corridor as well. I'm sort of slightly surprised there's not even a case for a trolley, but you will keep that under review.
Yes, I started my railway career at GNER in the early 2000s, and at GNER I think we had 100 dining cars every day, and it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was a full silver service, and when you looked at the numbers, I remember back in the day that was an expense, but it justified people paying for that first class, and there was obviously 3 carriages on there.
Yeah.
We looked at the numbers for catering and thought, actually, we need to focus on getting the capacity in, which is what we've done. Yeah. And my heart says catering would be a good thing to do, but that's not for now. That will be something we'll keep under review.
We better stop this, actually, because we're just going to end up being strongly in agreement, I think. Look, last question, really, Richard. I mean, it's a 10-year deal, which, again, is great. That's a real sort of vote of confidence. What does it mean, though, for you've got a lot of sort of what I call sort of second generation DMUs that are, I mean, they must be 30, 35 years old now, which is terrifying, isn't it? What does this deal, particularly given you're actually taking on more than you're giving up in terms of the Mark III sets, what does this deal mean for your wider replacement strategy for rolling stock?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple of years ago, we launched what we call the Chiltern 2030 vision, which is to set out a plan to modernise and decarbonise this railway. And we're on with that in terms of its 3 phases. So phase 1 is to improve the trains we have. So we're refurbishing the younger diesels. I say younger, but they're 25-year-old Class 168s. We're going to do a light refresh on the older diesels, the 35-year-old Class 165s. I talked at the start about putting the recycled vegetable oil into fuel the current Class 68. So that's phase 1 underway. Phase 2 is the Mark 5s coming in, which is great. We can put that stamp on and say that's now secured. It's going to happen. Phase 3 is to replace the 165s, the 35-year-old diesels, with battery electric. And we've done a lot of work with Network Rail to take about 12 different options down to a preferred option, which for us is discontinuous electrification. And I know on the podcast, you and Nigel having this debate about discontinuous, and I recognise that. But from our perspective, with the technology available, battery electric, if you think about running at a Marylebone, and we've got 3 miles of tunnels and all the disruption that would come with putting wires through that, we're looking at a solution that we think could offer wiring in Marylebone, but then pantograph down, battery out through the tunnels, and pick up the pantograph with overhead wires out in our network. And that could be a cost-effective way of replacing the 165. So we've done a lot of thinking. We've done the outline, the strategic outline business case. We're still determined and ambitious to achieve a greener and quieter railway, particularly for the residents of Marylebone and for our colleagues and customers. So phase 2, stamp, we've got that underway with the Mark 5s coming in, but phase 3, we're doing as much work on that over the next 6 months as we've done the last couple of years. We need to make progress quickly.
I feel another conversation coming on, but let's just park that for now. I've just realised we've got the Managing Director of Chiltern Railways on. A very, very final question. East West Rail, you're the operator. It's got freight trains running down it now, so it's an operational railway. Winslow Station looks finished to me. Why aren't we running passenger services on it yet?
So we've made some really good progress in training colleagues. We've got nearly 50 drivers training at Bletchley, which is a new location for us. It's about 15 miles from Aylesbury, so it's a new depot and location for Chiltern, and that's progressing well. We've got some work just to do to finish Winslow Station, which is, as you say, looks ready, but still some work to do to fit it out inside. And the final bit, we need to finalise how we're going to operate the services. We're talking to colleagues and to trade union partners about that. When we've got something to say, we'll be able to share that more widely.
Okay. I get that. I won't push you any more on that. But look, it's nuts. Obviously, everybody's just desperate to see this thing in service as soon as possible. It's brilliant. So let's get it running. But listen, Richard, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. It is great news. And I think everybody, looked at this one and went, fantastic. So well done, and can't wait to see them in service. Richard Allan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Well, how about that then, Richard? What a great thing. I'm punching the air, really, because the traditionalist in me is celebrating the fact we've got a TOC with a traditional railway, non-electrified, continuing to develop the locomotive-hauled passenger train. Great.
Yeah. I thought you'd enjoy that. They're fabulous. I mean, there's a great customer experience. I went on them when they were with TPE, and I know they had some issues, but I think over there they do feel great. And of course, the good thing is they're getting more of them than the Mark III sets they're giving up. So they're actually growing capacity. And that's also a really good thing, going to a half-hourly Marylebone to Birmingham Moor Street service. That's terrific. Good? It is really good. The one thing that did surprise me, because if you're going to bring back first class, which they're going to do, is the fact there's no catering on it, not even a trolley. And I was surprised by that. I'm not my views on catering. How much money do you want to spend, really? But that's a long way from London to Birmingham on what's effectively a Premier service. So they'll keep it under review, but that I suppose that surprised me a bit. But overall, it's fabulous. It's fabulous.
Maybe they're expecting people to stock up with coffees and sandwiches and things at Marylebone on the station before they set off, or maybe they should open a bento box shop. Just one last point about the Mark IIIs, Mark Vs, Richard.
Yeah.
I suppose we could expect, there to be some regret at the Mark IIIs disappearing, but actually, I wonder if most people won't react as I did. I think it's a great thing, because what we're replacing the Mark III with is noticeably better and still a carriage, whereas what is normally the case is it is replaced with something which is not perceived to be as good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there'll be some people go, oh, well, the Mark III was peak British rail engineering and it was strong and all the rest of it, and what's followed since never been quite so good. There's quite a small group of people care about that stuff in terms of how it feels to the customer. As long as the reliability is there, I think it is a step up. So yes, I think that's.
I was going to Manchester when they were new, and the train that rolled in, I was expecting to be a DMU, and it was one of those, and it was a horrible, cold, wet night, and it was just wonderful. I mean, they are lovely vehicles.
They are very nice indeed.
So,
now I've got to sort of probably change the mood a little, if I may, and just talk a little bit briefly about something that I think is bubbling away. So this is not a story yet, Nigel, but I think it could become one. And that's a really exciting issue of the budget and the challenges that the Chancellor is facing. And it does impact on railway investment. So just bear with me. I mean, there's a recently interesting decision. The Bank of England chose to reduce interest rates, which was slightly odd, you could say, because inflation's still above the target.
I'm going up, I think.
Why did they do that? Because it sort of seems slightly odd. And there's been a lot of chatter, if you read the sort of financial papers or blogs or whatever, about the emergence of something called fiscal dominance. Now, fiscal dominance is a kind of a macro, big economic
Can I appeal that you remember people like me to whom you're now speaking in a foreign language?
Oh, no, okay. Well, listen, by the way, in what we're about to chat about, there's no such thing as a daft question. So listen, seriously.
That enables me considerably. Thank you for that.
Oh, that's fine. I will try and speak in English and not some peculiar language. But fiscal dominance is a phrase that you might see from time to time. And all it means, it's not that complicated. It means that it was what happens when a central bank, in our case, the Bank of England, instead of applying its policies to control inflation, actually has to apply its policies to support the consequences of the government's borrowing situation. Which
I get it.
In this case, of course, is very high debt, very high interest payments. And so, the cost of borrowing has got to be under control. So you could argue the Bank of England has had to take its eye off the ball that it really wants to focus on and focus on something else, right? And that is effectively fiscal dominance. The dominant force is...
Because I read somewhere that we spend more on interest now than we do on defence.
And one of the real problems, I suppose the way to explain this as easily as I can is saying that the situation for the public finances is it's so challenging at the moment. It's like the government is taking out a second or a third credit card to borrow money to pay off the interest only on the first credit card. In the end, it just becomes
madness.
A bit of it can get madness. Now, the government's argument is we're trying to create growth. We want growth. But the problem is that all their policies at the moment, the short-term policies, the ones that they've been able to get through have kind of, they're sort of tax-raising ones, which have rather had the opposite effect so far. And I think, actually, if you want to be sort of sympathetic to the Chancellor, must have the worst job in the world at the moment, really, probably knows that you've got to reduce public expenditure. But when they tried to do that recently with welfare reform...
Look what happened.
So you've got on paper, they have a massive parliamentary majority, but they couldn't get that through, and you ended up with a massive U-turn. So reduction in expenditure seems to be a real problem for them. So
they can't cut spending and they can't raise taxes.
Well, I think we are getting, that's a really interesting point. I think we are getting close to the practical limit of the ability to raise more tax. And you listen to sort of some perhaps more left of centre economists, and they will say, well, none of this really matters. Because if you borrow money and you invest in stuff, it leads to growth and it pays for itself. There's two problems with that. Number one is there's a lag, right?
Okay.
So, and that lag is real. But the other problem is sentiment, right? And do the markets believe you've actually got a grip? And at the moment, Rachel Reeves' problem is that the markets, I suspect, and I mean particularly the gilt markets, and I'll explain what that is in a second. I think the gilt markets are going to go, we're not entirely sure. Because when you came to pay, you said it was a 22 billion black hole, and now you're saying it's a 50 billion black hole. So hang on a minute, what are you doing, right? What's gilts? Gilts is very simple. When a government borrows money, it does so depending on whether the total amount of money going out in any one year is bigger than the total amount of money coming in. It's that simple, right? And the gap is either a surplus or a borrowing. If you've got more coming in than going out, it's a surplus. If you've got more going out than coming in, it's borrowing. And the government issues something called gilts, treasury gilts, and it's simply a loan note that says, you lend me some money and I will repay you. The government will repay you back over time.
So we effectively buy those from the government for a fixed period, and they'll pay us back and a rate of interest on a contracted basis.
And they are rock solid because the government always pays its debts, right? The problem is, ever since the whole Liz Truss moment, when she ended up with 45 billion or whatever the number was, as completely unfunded tax cuts, and didn't really sort of talk to anybody about it first. The gilt market went, whoa, hang on a minute. And there was a panic. And they sold gilts because there was a real concern. We're not sure they're going to be good for the money. And the real problem, Nigel, is, and I won't go into this in detail because this is really kind of nerdy, but the pension market and the mortgage market is so linked to gilts now. What actually happened was there were things called margin calls, and to be able to fund those, people sold more gilts, and we ended up with this real spiral, and it was a real crisis, and the Bank of England had to step in, right? And it cost her, first of all, it cost the Chancellor his job, and then it cost her premiership. So Rachel Reeves right now will be very, very concerned to make sure that we don't end up with a gilt crisis after the next budget. And that is really about sentiment. Will the markets have the confidence that what she announces has finally got a grip?
Do they believe that she's got a policy that's going to work?
Absolutely, bingo, right. And that's really important. So if this budget doesn't land well, and it's as much about sentiment as it is about anything else, right? It's the market's having confidence, and it's changed, right? You know, when I was studying economics, John Maynard Keynes, who was kind of, you know, obviously around in the 30s and 40s, you know, the big sort of titan,
the guru
of exactly right, believed that that spending money, running a fiscal deficit, was something called counter-cyclical. So you basically spent money when you had a bit of a recession in order to stop it becoming a depression. That's slightly different now. Now it's really about confidence. And if she doesn't give the markets confidence, then we could have a real problem. What does that matter for the railways? Because that's the point, isn't it? I think two things. Number one, I genuinely believe this. If you're out there and you've got a scheme or a project that is not currently funded or committed, and you think that there's a chance of convincing the government to fund your scheme, forget it. Abandon hope.
That bad.
Right? That is not happening. I genuinely believe that's not happening unless something else gets chucked out instead, right? As Peter Hendy said at the Transport Select Committee, there isn't enough money.
There was no money and now there's even less.
Well, yeah. And this is a real issue, right? It's a real problem. So, you know, I do think there's quite a lot of delusion out there. They think, oh, you know, we can get this scheme through or... No, I don't think it's happening. And I'd go even further. I think there are lots of officials and local authority people in Maryland, all kind of dreaming up and working up these schemes. Stop it. There's no money for them. So save the money on working up the schemes, right? So that may be a bit dramatic, but I think that we are terrible at stopping spending money, right? And we need to. But I think that's one thing that's definite. There's no more money. But here's the big thing. If there is a crisis and she doesn't convince the markets, then there is a possibility, and I say possibility, not probability, right? Possibility that it gets so difficult that the government has to come back and almost rethink the things it originally committed to.
What, cut existing stuff that we think is secure?
It's not impossible. I would not rule that out.
Wow.
Right? So,
such as?
Well, anything that we think is committed. I mean,
we thought HS2 was committed, didn't we?
Yeah, pushing things back. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do about pushing things back. Rephasing is the phrase, isn't it? But, you know, all the money that was put aside for light rail schemes and local transport schemes, outside of London, maybe that has to get revisited, right?
Because that was 15 or 16 billion, wasn't it?
All of that. Isn't it interesting, Nigel, that Northern Powerhouse Rail, which at the spending review was a few weeks away, and then in the infrastructure strategy was a few weeks away, and it's now been a couple of months, and it's still not been announced. They're still talking about what it is and the timescales. I mean, I don't believe in, you know, sort of conspiracy stuff, but I do believe that in terms of practical economics and public expenditure, there's a lot of scratching of heads going on at the moment because they don't have much room for maneuver. So I don't want to sound too desperate, but I think the most important thing for the railway is right now, everybody's got to focus on delivering a reliable, predictable,
safe.
Because that's our best chance of convincing the powers that be that rail is a good place to spend your money, because otherwise I think there's some real challenges coming if that budget doesn't land.
Stop splashing it against the wall.
Indeed. So sorry about that, but there you go. I thought that was just it's not happened yet, and I might be wrong, but I am nervous given the state of public finances. I think they're pretty bad.
Okay, well, I was in quite a good mood when we started this program.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It's all right. We've got to be realistic, haven't we? And
we do.
We always do call it as we see it and with your specific insights. And it's got to be worth listening to. But I do have to say, I do hope you're wrong.
And do you know what? On this occasion, so do I. I hope she gets a budget that the markets go, yeah, that makes sense.
A rare burst of agreement there, eh?
Indeed.
We both hope you're wrong. Remember that. Right. Regular green signallers will recall that in January 2024, seems another lifetime, doesn't it? LNER launched a pilot called Simpler Fares, which it is fair to say generated a great deal of reaction, and not all good. In summary, for a limited number of stations, tickets to and from them were just 3 options. 1, fixed. Advance tickets only valid for the booked services stated on the ticket. 2, semi-flexible, a new 70-minute flex fare allowing customers to travel as booked or start their journey up to 70 minutes earlier or later, travelling with LNER for the main leg of their journey, and fully flexible, valid for travel at any time of the day. That meant that the turn up and go off-peak and super off-peak fare was gone. And that's what so many people reacted negatively to, accusing LNER of using the smokescreen of simplicity to jack up prices, though we always have said if simplicity means an impact on prices overall, doesn't it? Now, LNER has launched phase 2 of the pilot, which sees 27 stations around London added, including stations between London King's Cross and Stevenage. As part of this planned stage, LNER say it's working with Go Via Thameslink Railway, GTR, and Transport for London, TfL, to make sure that the new semi-flexible fare is available for connections using their services where applicable. Richard, there's been a huge reaction on the rail forums at Kel Surprise and in various chat rooms. Do we think those reactions are consistent with the views of passengers at large, or are we in a little bubble here?
Well, that's the really interesting question, isn't it? We did ask LNER if they would come on and chat about it. On this occasion, and by the way, LNER, all the train companies are usually very, very good. There's a couple of noticeable exceptions, but LNER normally will do. But they said, look, we won't on this occasion, because all it is a roll. It's a kind of the next phase of a pilot that we said would last 2 years, and then we will review it. And I've got some sympathy with that. But it did push a little bit, and to get a sense of what passengers were saying, right, actually on the ground. And there's always that risk of the Pareto effect, isn't there, where 95% of the moaning is coming from 5% of the cohort. So,
how very railway that is.
Indeed. So as a result, we got this statement from them. An LNER spokesperson said, I'll just read this out. Customers travelling on the routes where our Simpler Fares pilot is in place have a higher customer satisfaction rating for ease of booking than before the launch period. And independent customer research shows the new simpler fare structure is viewed net positively compared to the old structure when it comes to clarity, flexibility, fairness, and ease. Now, I thought that was a very clever statement, because it's viewed net positively on those factors, and it's got a higher customer satisfaction for ease of booking than before. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's got a high customer satisfaction for price or value, right? Now, so I think, there's been that could be sort of slightly selective, but nonetheless, customer satisfaction, clearly there's a difference between what customers think and what, sort of people who chat on forums think. So there you go. That's the position from LNER at the moment.
But one of the issues was the fact that the off-peak tickets were refundable, but the 70-minute flex is not, meaning that the only refundable ticket available on the pilot routes is the full price open ticket. Now, in that excellent interview with David Horn you did in the train spotter's position out on the end of the platform at York, I do recall that you challenged David on that very point when you interviewed him, and he seemed to be sympathetic to it.
Yeah, no, well, I did challenge him on exactly that point, and actually this is what he said. One of the challenges with it, though, is that now, if you travel to Edinburgh, the only genuinely refundable fare is the full fare, which is £205 each way, right? The 70-minute flex one, you can change the trains, I think, but you can't get it refunded. And things do change. I mean, surely that one thing that needs to be considered is that 70-minute flex fare becoming refundable. Otherwise, we are putting off people who might have been the casual traveller.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that is one of the things that, as we move forward, we would have to consider.
Didn't actually say he was going to do anything about it, did he? He said it needs to be considered or looked at.
Well, he agreed with the point.
Yeah.
He said that there. And in fairness, they've said, look, it's a 2-year pilot and we're not going to, we'll have to discuss the outcome of it when it's finished. But, he did say, he agreed on that.
He did.
He went on to explain that the semi-flexible, the 70-minute fare is really driven off the advanced fare. And it's actually not that straightforward to make it refundable because an advanced fare isn't refundable. But I think that's a systems issue more than if you want to do it, you can do it.
If you've got the will.
Yeah. And I think making the 70-minute flex fare fully refundable would take a lot of the sting out of the issue. Might not get rid of all of it, but I think it would. It's the fact that you can only get a refund if it's the £200 single
full
fare
price
too.
ticket. Who does that?
That just feels wrong, right?
It does, and I guess I'm right in saying that even to do this, they're going to need DFT permission, and they could be sticky about it, couldn't they?
Well, they could be. Well, they'll have to talk to the DFT, clearly. But, you're also balancing it with public finances and the cost of the railway. So it's not straightforward. But I still hold on to the fact that he said,
he did.
Look, I do agree with that point. And I think we will come back to that in due course.
And David is a great operator who's got a lot of experience with dealing with government. And I'm sure he will put his case powerfully when the moment comes.
Agree.
So good luck, David, if that's what you're going to go for, which we hope you do. We'll return to this, Richard, without question. Right, from one operator who generally has a high approval rating to one that does seem to struggle on a regular basis. And it will come as no surprise to say I'm talking about CrossCountry. Now, the Daily Telegraph ran a story on August the 7th stating that train guards at CrossCountry are to go on strike Saturday the 23rd and Monday the 25th of the bank holiday weekend. Groan. Over so-called technology payments. The row has come about, according to the Telegraph, because of a, quote, surge in the use of smart tickets which are displayed on mobile phones instead of being printed on paper. Apparently, guards traditionally receive a commission of 5% for all tickets they sell, but their take-home pay is now being impacted because of the transition to digital products. Further, according to the Telegraph, from Tuesday 26th until further notice, guards will refuse to scan tickets on phones. Richard, you've done some digging. What have you unearthed?
Well, I mean, we're to begin with, we're taking it on face value from the Telegraph piece that all those things are correct, right? And I don't know about the commission payments or so forth. So we did ask CrossCountry some questions. Now, they've not come back to us in time to be able to do this recording. So it may be that they actually challenge a lot of that in due course. And if that's the case, then we'll report back next week. I mean, I'll tell you what I asked them. I said, when did the unions first indicate they wish to be paid extra for scanning mobile phones, which is just a fact, really. This 5%, is that right? How much does that actually cost CrossCountry each year? How many train guards are there in total? And they did actually ask, since you're not supposed to get on a train without a valid ticket to begin with, what kind of tickets are actually being sold on the trains? And there's also a real issue of, is it correct, I asked, is it correct that if you don't scan the mobile phone ticket and it's an open ticket, it doesn't trigger it and therefore it potentially remains valid, usable again, right? And that's kind of got a revenue protection fraud issue. So I asked them those questions. I did speak to them briefly last night. She said, well, I'm trying to find the answers. Some of that might be confidential. I suspect that what the total cost to CrossCountry is per annum may well be the one that is. I felt the rest of it was just facts, really. So I don't really have an awful lot to kind of report back, really. But it feels to me, well, not this week, but we'll come back to it next week. Feels to me, Nigel, this is one of those where the travelling public, if I can call it that, are just going to go, are you serious?
Not to mention the media.
You're going on strike over refusing to scan a ticket that is simply the consequence of technological progress, which actually, by and large, customers really, really appreciate using. I know I use it all the time. I just think it's just it's a bit tin-eared. That's the problem. complain about some things, but this seems a very strange one to have complained about.
It doesn't put the union in a good light at all.
Well, I don't think it puts anybody in a good light. I mean, how has this just been come about? I'm sure it's more complicated, right? We'll find out.
As you say, we've only the Telegraph side of it at the minute, which I'm naturally suspicious about, but I'm sure.
Right. Okay. I don't know why, but I'm
sure we're going to back to it, aren't we? As it develops,
we will come back to
or
it.
otherwise.
Yeah.
And now it's time to thank everyone who supports us. First of all, our thanks to RIA, the Railway Industry Association, our programme supporter, and Rail Business Daily, our media supporter. Then a big thank you to everyone who has left us a super thanks on YouTube this week, and you all are. Chris Exley, Alistair Rutledge, Graham Whitley, John Kerman, Alan Kirkman, Bob Walsh, Andrew Seddon, the Independent Brigline Rail Group, Caroline Cleveley, and Richard Skelton. Thanks ever so much for these super thanks. They really do make a difference to us, and we're incredibly grateful for the support.
Yeah, we are. And thanks also to our new members who are Amir Matani, Andrew Taylor, Ed Leach, Chris Brown, Jack Sanderson, Edgar Johnson, Alex Fortune, Mike Horsfield, Mike Bradfield, and DC061, as well as to GBRf 1944, who upgraded from silver to gold. Thank you so much. You can see all our supporters and all those members at the end of the show in the end credits. We do list everybody. That's important to us to say thank you. If you are a gold or a silver member, please do let us have your email or your actual address, your postal address. You can send us that securely to info@greensignals.org. It's important because you get some stuff as part of your membership, and I can't send it to you if I don't have your address. But most of all, thank you so much for your support.
Absolutely. The three of us are very grateful. And now it's time for this week's Railway News Roundup. Thanks to Steve Roberts and John Kirkman for spotting this one. According to the BBC, the fire brigade was called upon to refill the tender of Flying Scotsman at Kettering when the road water tanker due to meet it broke down. The locomotive was, of course, en route to the greatest gathering at Derby, hauling the Belmond Pullman at the time. The fire service said its crews were proud to assist with a very special operation, a great example of teamwork across services to keep history steaming ahead. I'm sure the firemen quite like doing that one. Someone in the PR team worked hard to come up with a cheesy line there, but seriously, well done the fire brigade for helping out. Thanks to Roger Bastin for letting us know about this one. The Guild of Railway Artists will be holding its annual Rail Art exhibition, which is always excellent, of paintings at Kidderminster Railway Museum, next door to the Severn Valley Railway, the old goods warehouse, I think, from 2 p.m. on Saturday, August the 16th, and then daily from 10 till 4 each day until 2 o'clock on Sunday, September 28th. Entry to the exhibition is free, and there will be 60 or more paintings on display this year in a variety of styles and media. The Guild's exhibitions celebrate the profound social and historical impact railways have had on the development of mankind since 1825. The exhibition will include work by Philip Hawkins, Malcolm Root, John Austin, what great names they are, and many other member artists. The majority of works of art on display will be offered for sale.
It's good, that, isn't it? Mm. And actually, sticking with the Severn Valley Railway, the Severn Valley Railway Company Limited have voted to support the next stage of their ambitious restructure plans, which they've called the One Railway Project. At the company's annual general meeting at Kidderminster Railway Museum, there you go, on Saturday, 9th of August, members voted overwhelmingly in favour of the amalgamation of the Severn Valley Railway Company Limited, which is the membership organisation, with the Severn Valley Railway Holdings PLC, following the conversion of the latter company into something called a charitable community benefit society. Now, the process of conversion and the amalgamation, I'm told, is well underway. I guess the result is going to be a reduction in costs because you're running one organisation, not two. I'm going to be going to the Severn Valley Railway in October, Nigel, and I look forward to chatting with Gus a bit more about that, Gus Dunster a bit more about that, because it sounds, if it's what it is, it could be a model that others may wish to look at as well.
Indeed so. Thanks to Norman Dawes now for sending us this one. GB Rail Freight have hauled their last PCA rail wagon from the Port of Blythe to Alvan's British Aluminium's Fort William plant after 37 years and more than 50 million miles. Wait for it, here come the numbers. The PCA rail wagons have travelled the equivalent of 2,000 laps of the globe. That's 105 return trips to the moon, or nearly halfway to Mars. I do love these. They do set context in your head, don't they? The final departure from Fort William took place on Wednesday, July 9th, 2025, and was hauled by GBRf 66302. Another 10, it would have been me. After a brief stop at the port of Tyne, the train reached its destination at the port of Sunderland, where the wagons are now being decommissioned. Alvan's British Aluminium has entered early discussion with the Historical Rail Organisation regarding the possible donation of selected PCAs with the aim of preserving a small part of the UK's industrial heritage for future generations. The PCA wagons have already been replaced by refurbished JPA powder tank wagons, 20 of them apparently. So this very important rail freight flow continues. Good
news.
And that's the end of this week's Railway News Roundup. If you'd like to send us any snippets of news, big stories, little stories, local to you, more widely featured, then please do so. We would rather be told several times than miss something. And if we use the piece that you send us, we'll mention you when we read out the item. So please let us know what you find.
Yep, news@greensignals.org.
I forgot again, didn't I?
I know you did, but I was helping you out there. And all you needed to do was say nothing. But anyway, there you go.
I know.
Which means
I'll fess it up.
It's time to do the quiz. Now, last week's question, I think, was a fairly straightforward one, and it related to the video we done on the Class 93 with the cab ride on the test train.
Excellent video.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. And the question was this. What was the name of the location? What is the name of the location where the driver, Robert Buchanan, did a climb from a standing start on a slippy rail to demonstrate the power,
sure-footedness?
Yeah, indeed, on the way back from Carlisle. And the answer was, of course, Eden Valley. Now, a couple of people said Shap, and I'm afraid I couldn't accept that. It really needed to be Eden Valley. I know I said coming back from Carlisle, but Shap, of course, you could have been T-Bay.
Goes all the way down to T-Bay in the Loon Gorge,
so
doesn't it?
it needed to be Eden Valley. And the winner, randomly chosen from the very many correct answers we had, was Hugo Rogers. So well done, Hugo. If you could send us another email to quiz@greensignals.org with your address, I'll get your mug out to you. And so to this week's question. I hope this isn't too abstract. It's I think a lot of people will know it, actually. But it's this. What connects the city of Sheffield, the railway, and potatoes?
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping it's not too abstract. You probably will go, okay, right. Anyway, if you think you know.
How did that go?
No, I'm not doing that again. Answers to quiz@greensignals.org by midday, Saturday, August 16th. We'll put all the correct answers in a hat, one of which will not be Nigel's, clearly, and select a winner at random to receive one of our very special Green Signals Quiz Winners mugs.
And here's a nice story to end on. Martin Dooley of Arcadis reminds us this year's Ride the Route cycle ride in support of the Railway Children charity will take place between 4th and 6th of September and will involve riding the 350 kilometres from Liverpool to Darlington via Scarborough. Seems entirely appropriate in Railway 200 year to be going to Darlington. In addition to Arcadis, Martin says Volcarel, Atkins Realis, Hitachi, Transpennine Express, and no doubt plenty of others are all supporting the event. We'll put a link to the Railway Children Ride the Route page where you can find out more on our website. Looks exhausting, but worth it for a great cause. You're a bit of a cyclist, Richard. Are you going to do it?
No. Oh, well, I can't, unfortunately, because of the dates. I did look at the route profile, and okay, it's not the Tour de France and Mont Ventoux, but there's quite a lot of up. I'm saying so. Well done, everybody is doing it. It will be tough, but it will be good.
And sadly, that's all we got time for this week. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, or if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Green Signals channel on YouTube. And if you really want to support us, find out about our membership scheme on YouTube or Patreon. But most importantly, please join us again next week for this show, which will always be free. We'll see you then. Until then, it's goodbye from me and...
It's goodbye from me.
Have a fantastic week.